So if I were to ask you, what is the best element in all of Genshin Impact, what would you say? Let's ask my chat right now. Chat, what do you guys think is the best element in all of Genshin? All right, very interesting, chat. This is my chat's rankings of all the elements in Genshin. We'll see just how close they get to my personal opinion on all of the elements. So, why am I making this video, you may ask? I've been playing this game since day one. I guarantee I am gonna teach you something you did not know about the elements. And hey, we're just gonna discuss, have some fun, and figure out what is the best element in all of Genshin. Let's get to it, starting at the worst. In my opinion, it's gotta be Geo. Rip Ito for getting chosen as the Geo representative. It's not a shocker. Geo is unfortunately the weakest element in the game. Now, you may be wondering why. Bro, Geo doesn't have elemental reactions. This entire game's combat system, the very fun combat system we love in Genshin, is an elemental reactions based system. And dude, all Geo has is Crystallize. What does Crystallize do? When Geo meets only 4 different elements, it makes a little crystal on the ground that gives you a shield. That shield isn't very good, and that shield scales with elemental mastery, bro. I'm never gonna build elemental mastery on my Geo character. It's kind of sad. I really wish Geo was a lot cooler than it is, but hey, let's talk about some positives that Geo has. Geo works on pretty much every team in the game. Like, it can be splashed on to a lot of different teams. It's very inoffensive, and it has very good splashable units, such as Zhongli, as we all know, the Geo Archon himself. Dude, he can go on a bunch of different teams because he provides a big shield. He's very useful in shredding damage, shredding resistances, making you do more damage. Cool. But then Geo itself doesn't really negatively affect a lot of team comps. Or, you know, a character like Albedo, right? He's a sub DPS off field, and the Geo procs, you know, don't really get in the way of a lot of different teams. They can, but it doesn't happen all the time. Geo Resonance is actually really fire, okay? It increases shield strength, great. Characters protected by a shield just straight up do 15% more damage, and they can decrease Geo resistance. All of that put together actually makes a really strong elemental resonance, but it doesn't carry Geo to the top tiers of Genshin Impact, unfortunately. Just because I say Geo is the worst element in the game does not mean Geo is bad and useless, and you can't 36-star the Abyss with Geo characters. Bro, Ito, mono Geo teams, they slap. They destroy the Abyss. You can beat the Abyss with any character you want, any team comp you want. I have to disclaim this because people get really passionate about their favorite characters. Go out there and use them and have some fun, okay? But where there is multiple elements, there must be a best and there must be a worst. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room with Geo. Navia is coming up. She is going to be the first Geo character added to Genshin in almost 2 years. So a lot of people are hoping that Navia is going to be the Geo Renaissance, okay? She's gonna make Geo top tier again. And do I think that is possible? No, I don't. Having a really good Geo character does not make Geo good, okay? Zhongli is a good Geo character, but Geo is not good. Do you see where I'm going with this? For Geo to actually be good, I think, unfortunately, Geo needs some sort of rework in Genshin Impact. Whether it's a crystallized buff or gaining reactions with different elements, that's what it needs. I think Geo, for the future of Genshin Impact, is going to probably be the weakest element, but who knows? Geo right now. All right, let's get into the second, unfortunately, worst element in Genshin. Is Cryo. I love Cryo. You guys know how much I love my characters like Rosaria and stuff like that. And I do advocate for a lot of the weaker Cryo characters a lot of people sleep on, like Diona. But Cryo is in a tough spot right now. To really understand why Cryo isn't that great, we need to talk about all of Cryo's reactions, because unlike Geo, we actually have reactions, okay? Melt. Melt is a good, strong, great reaction. It is an amplification reaction with Pyro. Awesome. Now, Freeze is all right. Freeze has been getting worse and worse over time. We'll get to it. And then Superconduct, that is Electro and Cryo. It's just straight up bad. It could possibly be the worst elemental reaction if we're not going to include things like Shatter and whatever. And then finally, Cryo does not have a direct reaction with Dendro. And Dendro, we'll see where it ends up on the tier list, but it's a very cool, fun, unique, and it's a strong element that added a lot of fun to Genshin. And for some reason, they didn't let Cryo work with Dendro. So it's tough. And with Dendro popping in and Cryo getting pushed out, kind of sucks for Cryo. So let's first talk about Freeze and why it's been getting worse. Pretty much, long story short, Genshin has been making more and more bosses and big monsters that just straight up cannot be frozen. And Freeze as a reaction is not a reaction that does damage. It doesn't have any form of damage amplification. It just makes the enemies sit there, not being able to move, making it easier to do damage to them. So you are at the bay of if Hoyoverse feels nice enough to give you an Abyss cycle for the month that Freeze is actually good and viable in. And when Freeze isn't, characters that really like Freeze, like Ayaka and like Ganyu, just honestly feel a lot worse. Now, Melt, once again, is a good, strong, really fun DPS reaction. Some of the best Melt teams in Genshin, such as Ganyu Melt, Ganyu can pump out a ton of damage with it, but you really need specific characters to make it the best. Things like Nahida, things like Bennett, and things like Dia can kind of work. Kazuha is another one that makes that easier, and it's just like, it's actually kind of hard to play. So it's like Melt is good, but it's not as just completely brain dead as some of the other reactions on this list. All right, real quick, we'll talk about Superconduct. It lowers the physical resistance of the enemy that gets hit by it, and the reaction itself straight up does like negative damage. It does nothing. It's not like a cool Melt. It's not like a Bloom Seed blowing up. It does nothing. And physical is quite literally the worst, most forgotten about team comp in Genshin from Hoyoverse. They haven't done anything really for physical in a while. So, I mean, Superconduct is just, it's just, bruh. So the one positive secret thing I do have to say about Cryo is how Cryo reacts with Dendro. James, wait, Eakes, didn't you just say that Cryo and Dendro don't react? They don't. But here's a cool thing. An enemy can have both Cryo and Dendro on them at the same time. So I'm gonna try to not get too nerdy with you, but for teams like Hyperbloom, which is, spoilers, one of the best team comps in the game, what it does is it allows you to create more Dendro seeds when the enemy is affected by both Cryo and Dendro. Making it super easy to understand, the Hydro hits and it not only freezes, but it has to go through the Cryo, and then because some of the Hydro got mitigated from the Cryo, it doesn't completely get rid of the Dendro, which means you can make 3 seeds or 4 seeds instead of 1 or 2 in certain situations, okay? So it just makes Hyper Bloom better. And this team comp is called Hyper Fridge. The mechanic of how it works is called Fridge. It's actually a really cool team comp because I think most people know that Hyper Bloom is really good, but that 4th slot on the team, you can make it whatever you want. You could have another Electro for more damage, more energy. You could have Hydro for the resonance. You could have Dendro for the elemental resonance too, but you could also run a Cryo character, and you're also going to freeze the enemy occasionally, which is a good thing because if they are freezable, you're getting freezes while also doing Hyper Bloom. So Hyper Fridge is actually a really cool team comp, and it does give Cryo a little bit of life. Now going into Cryo's resonance, I think a lot of people think that this is an extremely strong resonance. I think it is all right. Affected by Electro 40% less, who cares? Increases crit rate though against opponents who are frozen or affected by Cryo. The reason why this isn't quite as strong as people might think is the Cryo has to actually be above the head of the enemy or they're frozen for you to get that bonus. For example, if you were running Ganyu on a Melt team and you had another Cryo character, let's say Diona, get the Elmer Mastery, get the shield. On a Melt team, the opponent is almost never going to be affected by Cryo. They're gonna have Pyro on them and then you're gonna melt it off. So there are certain teams that just literally don't benefit from this. Yes, the freeze teams do, but not every Cryo team is actually going to get the bonus. Cryo isn't terrible, but it is in 6th place. Next up, at 5th place, one of my favorite elements in the entire game, Pyro. Pyro is an element that some people, you asked them in patch 1.0 when Genshin first came out, Pyro was easily the best element in the entire game, but it's taken a bit of a fall from grace, and let's get into why. Going into Pyro's reactions, Vaporize is fantastic. Great reaction. Melt, we already went over that. Awesome reaction too. Burgeon is also fire, but these elements require a lot of planning, they require a lot of team building, and you just have to like play better. These teams can be extremely good, but they're not as brain dead as some other team comps we'll get into later. And then we've got Burning, which is not great. And we have Overload, which is also not the best. Let's get into the weaker ones like Burning and Overload. So the only real viable Burning team as of right now is called Air Fryer. It's pretty much using Anemo, Pyro, and Dendro to just tick down the enemy's health as much as you can with Burning while you try to keep yourself alive because you can burn your own team. This team is fun. It's interesting. It's cool. Is it top tier in any way? No, not really, but hey, you could 36-star the Abyss with it, but it's not making waves in the meta. And then Overload is not a great reaction either. Look, it uses great characters. Raiden Shogun, she slaps, Xiangling goes hard, but the thing is Overload itself isn't great. The reaction does okay damage, but the big problem is it blasts the enemies away. You're blasting Abyss Mages away when you break their shield. You're blasting Hilichurls away, and it's hard to get them to group. It's a frustrating reaction to play with, and the damage it provides isn't exactly worth it. So Overload, pretty mid. All right, but then this is where Pyro gets good. I'm talking Vaporize, and I'm talking Melt first. Look, this is one of the kingpin, most famous team comps in all of Genshin, Hu Tao Vape. Then you've got things like Xiangling Vape with, you know, Child on national teams, or with just with Xingqiu or Yelan. Some of the best teams in Genshin use Vaporize. It is strong, it is good, but it requires a little bit more team planning, high quality artifacts. It's a great elemental reaction. It slaps. It's just a little bit harder to pull off at its top level. And then finally, we've got Burgeon wrapping up Pyro as an element. Burgeon goes hard. This team is a lot of fun, but there's only a few characters that really make Burgeon work, and it's Toma, and to a worse level of power level is Dia. Burgeon is a team that requires less quality artifacts. You just need to stack a bunch of elemental mastery onto the Pyro character, in this case, Toma, and then the rest of the team's gonna just kind of chill and get their elements to come out. Pyro's elemental resonance is actually a pretty good one. It increases attack by 25%, the cryo res, who cares? At the end of the day, this is a good elemental resonance. It's not top tier. It doesn't help every single character in the game. You know, characters that scale with HP or element mastery, they're not really gonna benefit from this too much. The support characters don't care, but it boosts your DPS characters. It is a good elemental resonance for sure. So Pyro chat at the end of the day is an extremely strong element, one that I love a lot, but it is just kind of one-dimensional in that all it wants to do is a lot of damage, and it actually requires other elements to really make it shine. So Pyro comes in at number 5. Coming in at the 4th best element has got to be Anemo. Anemo is the ultimate slap on to any team to support, to do a lot of damage. Anemo is extremely good. Let's get into why. So one thing that makes Anemo extremely good is how much damage it does for very low effort. You don't need high quality artifacts for Anemo to do a lot of damage. You just stack elemental mastery, and then the one reaction you got, swirl, does more damage. You don't need to waste time with the crit stats, with the crit damage stats. You can just do a lot of damage just by existing. And then Anemo allows you to do more elemental application. Characters like Sucrose or Skill, Kazuha, they swirl with other elements. So you swirl with Pyro, it's gonna create a Pyro reaction with everything around. Electro, Hydro, you name it, Anemo allows you to do that. This is just one of the many examples you can make of Anemo being sick and creating more elemental reactions. This is a Hyper Bloom team where the Electro character, Fischl, actually isn't good at proccing the seeds, but all these characters are really good. So what you do is Sucrose can swirl the Electro with her skill and then pop all the Hyper Bloom seeds on the ground, and then the Hyper Bloom is just scaling with Sucrose because she's the Electro. It's a really cool team that allows you to get creative and all that kind of stuff. This is just one of the examples of Anemo being really good. But the real reason why Anemo is so freaking strong is this artifact set right here. 4-piece Viridescent Venerer. Increases swirl damage by 60%, decreases opponent's elemental res to the element infused in the swirl by 40%. Bro, shredding resistances of the enemies in Genshin is one of the strongest possible things you can do. Dude, Raiden's C2, known as one of the most broken constellations in the whole game. Why is it good? Because it ignores defense, okay? Taking the defenses away from enemies, the res, really, really, really strong. This is why Anemo is the ultimate glue to every team comp. Vaporize, Animo at the bottom. Aggravate, Animo at the bottom for the electro damage. It's really that simple. It's the ultimate support team. Animo is still so good to this day. You cannot go wrong picking up super good Animo characters like Kazuha, Venti, and Sucrose. The Hazo mains are going to be chirping. Probably the weakest part about Animo, though, is its elemental resonance. Decreases stamina by 15%. It's cool. It's nifty. How much does it come into play during combat? Not a ton. And then increases movement speed by 10%. Also cool. How necessary is it in combat? Who knows? Shortens skill cooldown by 5%. That's a pretty cool one. But here's the thing, guys. Not that many teams are going to run double Animo. Yes, this Air Fryer team can run this, but okay. And then I guess I just got to talk about it. Animo DPS characters. We're talking Xiao, Wanderer, Heijo. If Animo were just treated as this raw damage dealing element, it wouldn't be great. It doesn't have these damage dealing reactions like Melt, like Vaporize, like Aggravate. So it's honestly really not the best, but I'm looking at Animo as its support and all around and everything it can do, as I should. And yeah, you don't really get Animo resonance ever, and it's not exactly worth forcing onto a team. We are rolling into the top 3 elements in Genshin. Now, this next element, if you asked people who were playing in patch 1.0 Genshin on release, they would have said, a lot of them would have said, this is the worst element in the game. This element has had an extreme glow up, and that element is Electro. So a lot of people might actually want Electro higher on this list, but I just gotta be completely honest. Electro's glow up is definitely tied to just how good Dendro is. So I think it is only fair that Dendro takes. Electro did slowly start to get better before Dendro's release, though, because Inazuma released a ton of super strong Electro characters like Raiden, Yae Miko, stuff like that. And then people just got better at the game. They started realizing how broken Fischl is. They started realizing some elemental gauge stuff with Hydro. But the thing that really pushed Electro up the tier list and over the top was Dendro. Starting off Electro's reactions, Hyper Bloom is absolutely broken. It's easy to set up if you have the right characters. It does not take high quality artifacts, and it just blows up anything. AoE, single target, you name it. Hyper Bloom pops off. It is probably the best elemental reaction in the entire game. Aggravate is another extremely strong reaction. Now, you guys have heard me say throughout this whole video, Melt, you know, it needs a little bit more brain power to set up. Burgeon needs a little bit more brain power. I gotta keep it a buck. Aggravate and Hyper Bloom, no brain. 0 brain required. You can watch TikTok for 20 hours straight, and on the 21st hour you're awake, 36 Star of the Abyss, half asleep, because of how stupid broken these team comps are. They don't require timing, really. As long as you have good characters, you just roll your head on the keyboard, and Kaching on this team is gonna be popping off. And on this team, Raiden's gonna be popping the fattest Hyper Blooms you've ever seen. So Electro gets a bunch of points on the tier list because of just how brain dead the team comps are and how good they are. All right, so I already talked about Overload and Superconduct, why they aren't that great. So let's talk about the last final reaction for Electro. It is Electrocharge. I'm gonna be honest, Electrocharge is a pretty whatever, kind of forgettable reaction, but it is one of those reactions that you can just like have on a team, and it's just gonna give you a bit more damage. For smaller enemies, you know, that's why they call this taser, is because it makes them like freeze in place, which is cool. Doesn't really do that much against the bigger enemies. But at the end of the day, it is a non-offensive, easy to create reaction that, you know, does a little bit of extra damage. So this is probably, at this point in the meta and Genshin's lifespan, the weakest part about Electro is its elemental resonance. Affected by Hydro, 40% less. Cool. And then pretty much whenever you create an Electro-related reaction, there's a 100% chance that it generates 1 Electro elemental particle, and it can only happen every 5 seconds. You know, it's there. You get a little bit more energy there, buddy. Honestly, super disappointing elemental resonance, and it does not really lead to Electro's success. Electro carries itself without this elemental resonance in the equation. It is time to give away the crown. The best element in all of Genshin Impact will be revealed because I'm gonna tell you who second place is. In my opinion, the second best element in all of Genshin Impact, Dendro. Look, Dendro is absolutely goated. It's so cracked, but I do think Hydro just inches it out barely. And yes, chat had the exact same list as me. Why do you think this chat had the same ginormous brain as I? Well, it's probably because they hang out in the stream all the time and they just get to hear the vast knowledge that I bestow upon them every day live here on twitch.tv/EakesTV. So hey, come drop a follow. And if you're watching on YouTube, gosh, diddly darn, subscribe to the channel. We are trying to hit 50,000 subs by the end of the year. We're grinding. But anyway, thank you for watching the content. Let's go. Keeping it a stack, Dendro permanently changed Genshin Impact when it came out with Sumeru. And pretty much every single Dendro reaction is an absolute banger. Let's start with the most broken ones. Hyper Bloom, Aggravate, Nilou Bloom, and Burgeon are all world-class, top-tier Genshin reactions. They're all 4 different team comps, all centered around Dendro. And something that Dendro did was it even resurrected characters that people thought were genuinely dead on arrival. I'm talking Kuki. She went from extremely mid, extremely lame, no one thought this character was gonna be good, to one of the best support characters in the game. And another character that people thought wasn't great was Thoma. You know, he had these shields. They're not that good. We don't want pyro happening off field. It's getting in the way of our Hu Tao Vapes. These characters were both written off, not great, until Dendro made them shine. And before Dendro even released, I would have probably argued that Electro was the 3rd worst element in the game. And so this is just another reason why I'm putting Dendro above Electro, is because Electro owes Dendro a lot. This element is crap. Now let me say something about the 3 strongest Dendro comps in the game. We've got Hyper Bloom, we've got Burgeon, and we've got Nilou Bloom. The thing about these 3 team comps is they have made the game easier. Why do I say that? Because a team like this does not require good artifacts. You just need a lot of HP on Nilou and a lot of elemental mastery on Kokomi or whoever causes the blooms for you. On here, you just need a lot of elemental mastery on Thoma. Other stats don't really even matter. And then for Hyper Bloom, a bunch of elemental mastery on Kuki. Dendro made team comps that could easily 36 star the Abyss with a smaller amount of effort. We really needed to worry about crit stats, crit damage, attack, with all the pyro-related team comps, physical, Eula, Vape, etc. Dendro opened up a whole new breath of life to easier, super strong meta team comps, and I think that gives Dendro a ton of points in the Genshin meta. Finally, taking a look at Dendro's elemental resonance. Look, you get 50 EM for free. Great. And then after triggering Burning, Quicken, Bloom reactions, all nearby party members, they get 30 EM, and then triggering Aggravate, Spread, Hyper Bloom, Burgeon, all party members get 20 EM. This is just a ton of free elemental mastery. And hey, look, I just said those team comps are broken because you just slap elemental mastery on there. It's not the most broken resonance in the entire game, but it is a very strong one. Let's get in to the #1 best element in all of Genshin Impact, in my correct opinion. What's it gonna be, guys? What's it gonna be? Give it up for Hydro in the chat. Let's go. So many of the best team comps, elemental reactions, everything in Genshin use and rely on Hydro. Hydro can be a DPS element. It can be a support element. A ton of Hydro characters are healers. Hydro does it all, baby. Hydro. And the funny thing is, I think Hoyoverse knows this. They have given us 1 4-star Hydro character since the release of Genshin Impact, Candace. So my tinfoil hat theory is Hoyoverse just knows how cracked Hydro is, and they've just been kind of holding out on us, or they've been waiting, holding the floodgates for Fontaine, which we're in right now. But even then, still not that many Hydro characters coming out. Look, dude, when Freeze is good, it slaps. What do you need for Freeze? you need Hydro. Dendro, the GOAT. Hyper Bloom, you gotta have Hydro to make those seeds to cause Hyper Bloom. Nilu Bloom, super strong meta team. Obviously, you need a lot of Hydro characters. Vaporize, Hu Tao, going out there gaming. You've got to have Hydro. And also, like I said, a lot of Hydro characters heal. And heals just become even more useful because of the HP mechanics in Fontaine. At the end of the day, Hydro goes hard. It does the damage. It heals you. It is needed on every single meta team comp in the entire game. Let's finish it off with its resonance. Now, just how good is Hydro's resonance? Affected by Pyro 40% less? Who cares? But increases max HP by 25%. At first, you may think, nah, that's pretty mid. That's whatever. But dude, there are so many characters right now in Genshin whose damage scales with HP. We've got Nuvalet, Yelan, Hu Tao. That's just to name a few, okay? There are a lot of characters that get damage from HP, but then there's a lot of more characters that get more supportive effects from HP, boosting up the heals of all the characters, Kokomi, Barbara, pretty much every heal skills with HP. And then, yeah, just making your team more tanky, lets you screw around a little bit, make more mistakes in the Abyss and survive. That's not the most important one, but this is both an offensive and defensive elemental resonance. It's not flashy, it's not crazy, but it's very good. Look, I'm leaking. I had this made way before stream. I promise I didn't steal your guys' list. It was just happenstance that you guys are also complete geniuses, like myself. Legit, guys, every element in Genshin works, is strong, can be strong on different team comps, everything. This is just for some fun, okay? This is just for my meta cucks out there who want to know the best teams, or people that just like learning and hearing more about Genshin. This video was for you. Shout outs, as always, to the Twitch viewers hanging out with your boy live here on twitch.tv/EakesTV. I appreciate you guys oh so very much. And then homies on YouTube, thank you guys. I know there are a lot of people out there on YouTube that, you know, don't hang out with us live, and I appreciate you guys just as much. Shout outs to you. Hey, drop a like, a comment, subscribe to the channel. It really would mean a lot to your boy. And then shout outs to the patrons. We got Zik, Poison Tongue Boy, Gophers, Cloudy, Caldo, 120, everyone else over on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for supporting me, helping us make content full time. Homies, that is going to do it for this video. Hey, drop your list down below too. I am willing to hear you out, my friends. Have a good one. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hopefully on the stream too. Bye, everyone.